They said I would never surf again. That my story ended the day the ocean turned against me. That a shark's bite was enough to erase my dream forever. But what they didn't know was that the sea was not my enemy, it was my home. And no wound, no scar, no missing arm could take that away from me. I wasn't just fighting for waves. I was fighting for my life, for my future, and for every single person who was told they were too broken to rise again. Stay with me, because this story changes everything. I was 13 years old when the ocean almost took everything from me. Born in Hawaii, I had salt water running through my veins. My parents surfed, my brothers surfed, and for me, the waves were more than a sport, they were my language, my freedom, my faith. People said I had a natural gift, that I belonged to the ocean as much as the ocean belonged to me. But life doesn't care about gifts. It tests you. Sometimes in ways you can't imagine. October 31st, 2003. A morning like any other. The sun rising golden over Kauai. The water calm, the air sweet with the smell of salt and hibiscus. I paddled out with friends, ready to chase waves, not knowing that death was circling below me. The strike came fast, brutal, merciless, a shark, ripping away my left arm in a heartbeat. Blood in the water, screams on the beach, the world spinning into darkness. The doctors told me survival itself was a miracle. But survival wasn't enough. People whispered that I would never surf again, that I should let go of childish dreams and accept the new reality. And maybe they believed it. Maybe they thought they were being realistic. But what they didn't understand was this: surfing wasn't just something I did. It was who I was. This is not a story about a girl who almost died. This is a story about how death failed to break me. About how doubt, pity, and fear became fuel. About how the same ocean that almost killed me gave me back my life. And if you think this ends with me walking away from the waves, you don't know me at all. Before we dive into the rest of this story, I just want to take a moment to ask you something. If stories of resilience, justice, and redemption inspire you, make sure to subscribe to Beyond the Game so you don't miss the next one. Hit the like button if you believe in second chances, and drop a comment telling me your city and country. I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Alright, now let's get back to the story. From the moment I could walk, I was already chasing the waves. Hawaii wasn't just where I lived, it was my heartbeat, my destiny. My parents raised me in the water, my brothers taught me tricks, and the ocean became my playground. I was small, blonde, sunburned most days, but I had a confidence that only salt water could give me. By the time I was 8, I wasn't just playing with waves, I was competing, and I was winning. Coaches whispered my name at local contests, calling me the girl who belonged to the ocean. I wasn't afraid of anything. Not the size of the waves. Not the boys who said surfing was their territory. Not even the whispers that girls couldn't handle the same power. For me, surfing wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to myself that the ocean and I were one. But what I didn't know was that the ocean I loved so much would one day test me in a way no competition ever could. The rhythm of my childhood was simple: wake with the sunrise, paddle out before breakfast, come home with salt tangled in my hair. I carried my surfboard like an extension of my body. My friends at school teased me because I smelled like sunscreen more than perfume, but I didn't care. The waves were my real classroom. Every ride taught me balance, patience, and humility. Still, even in paradise, shadows lingered. Some boys at competitions laughed when I entered the water. They'd smirk and say, "She's too weak, just wait until she wipes out." Sponsors hesitated, choosing taller, stronger boys. But I didn't need their approval. Each time I dropped into a wave, I felt the ocean roar beneath me, reminding me who I was meant to be. Yet even as I rose with every wave, I couldn't see the darkness lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. By 12, I was already carving my path. People said I had a future in professional surfing, maybe even a world title. I trained harder than anyone else, hours in the water until my arms ached and my skin burned. I wasn't just chasing trophies, I was chasing freedom. My parents supported me, my community cheered me on, and every competition fueled my hunger. But with every victory came more eyes on me. Expectations grew heavier, whispers louder. Some people doubted me because I was a girl, others because I was too young. They didn't understand that I had something deeper: faith in myself, and faith in the waves. I believed nothing could touch me out there in the ocean, nothing could take surfing away from me. But life doesn't ask for permission before it changes everything. You only realize too late when the tide has already turned. I remember paddling out on mornings when the water was glassy, the horizon endless, and thinking, this is forever. I thought the ocean was my safest place, the one constant in a world full of doubt and noise. That sense of invincibility wrapped around me like sunlight. At 13, I felt untouchable, as if the waves themselves protected me. But nature has its own laws. And no matter how much you love the sea is wild, beautiful, and brutal, calm and merciless. It gives life, and it can take life. I was still too young to understand that balance. Too young to see that every gift comes with its shadow. And soon, I would learn that the ocean I trusted with my whole heart could also tear it apart in a single moment. Growing up on Kauai felt like living in paradise, but deep down I knew it was also a cage. The island was small, the competitions were local, and the dream burning in my chest was far greater than its shores. I didn't just want weekend trophies or polite applause from neighbors, I wanted the roar of the world's stage. I devoured magazines that featured Kelly Slater, Lane Beachley, and the legends who carved their names into history. I traced their photos with my fingers, whispering my own name as if one day it might appear in print beside theirs. While other girls at school planned dances and crushes, I was planning training sessions, chasing swells, and imagining what it would feel like to stand against the best in the world. My friends cheered me on, but not everyone believed. Some whispered, "She'll never make it off Kauai. She's just another island kid." But what they didn't see was how far I was willing to go and what I was willing to sacrifice to make that dream real. Discipline became my religion. Every sunrise, when the sky was still painted in lavender and the sand cool beneath my feet, I was already running the shoreline. Barefoot sprints, paddling until my arms screamed, drilling turns until my legs trembled, treated every day like the championship was tomorrow. My father, quiet but proud, filmed me from the beach so I could replay every move and dissect every mistake. My mother wrapped me in faith, reminding me that God gave me this gift for a reason. Her words became armor against the doubts of others. Judges often scored me lower than the boys, even when my rides were sharper. Sponsors looked past me, calling other kids safer bets. At 12, I stood on the edge of two worlds, one where I was just another girl chasing waves, and one where I could become unforgettable. And the closer I came to touching that second world, the more the first one tried to pull me back down. I still remember the contest where the waves towered over the reef, massive walls of water breaking with violent force. Some of the boys backed out, fear painted on their faces. I didn't hesitate. I paddled hard, dropped into a face twice my size, and carved my line with every ounce of strength. The crowd gasped, then erupted in cheers as I rode it all the way to shore. For that fleeting moment, I felt untouchable. But when the scores were posted, I watched the smirks spread across certain faces. Judges placed me below surfers who hadn't even touched the heavy waves. Fury burned inside me, but I bit it back. I told myself, let the ocean decide, not them. Each time I paddled out, I let the waves roar the truth they refused to acknowledge. Still, even the ocean has secrets, and soon it would reveal a truth that no scoreboard could prepare me for. That year, doors began to crack open. Invitations to bigger competitions arrived. Whispers of my name reached beyond the island. Reporters began writing about the little blonde from Kauai, marveling at my fearlessness. My dream was stretching wings. But recognition came with chains. Teachers scolded me for missing too many classes. Friends grew tired of my obsession, drifting away one by one. Parents of other kids muttered that I was wasting my youth on something impossible. Their words cut, but I smiled through them. They didn't know what it felt like to drop into a monster wave, to hear the ocean thunder beneath you, to feel infinite. Every sunrise, every scar from the reef, every victory and loss, I wasn't chasing a dream. I was already living it, and then, just when the world began to notice me, the ocean I loved would rise against me in a way that changed everything. October 31st, 2003. Halloween morning in Kauai. The sky was a soft wash of orange and pink. The air sweet with the smell of hibiscus. The waves were calm, almost gentle, nothing like the towering monsters of past contests. I paddled out with my best friend Alana and her family, boards gliding across the glassy surface. It felt like just another morning, one more chance to dance with the ocean. The water shimmered under the sun, and I thought, this is what forever feels like. My arms sliced through the sea in rhythm, my heartbeat steady, my eyes fixed on the horizon. Nothing about that day warned me what was coming. But danger doesn't always arrive with noise, it often waits in silence, just beneath the surface. We floated, waiting for the next set, the chatter of friends mixing with the crash of waves on the reef. My hand trailed lazily in the water, and for a moment I let my guard down. Then it happens, sudden, brutal, merciless. A dark shape rose from below, and in a heartbeat, pain exploded through my body. A shark, massive and unstoppable, tore into my left arm just below the shoulder. The world spun into chaos. The water turned red. My scream was lost in the roar of the ocean. Time fractured into fragments. Alana's eyes wide with horror. The board jerking beneath me. The sound of teeth against flesh. In that instant, my life was no longer measured in years or dreams, it was measured in seconds. I remember the rush of blood leaving me, the cold seeping in, the weakness spreading fast. Yet even through the haze, instinct kicked in. I clung to my board with my remaining arm, fighting the dizziness, refusing to sink. Alana's father moved with impossible speed, pulling me toward safety, his face set with grim determination. Voices shouted, hands reached, and somehow, through the blur of pain, I felt myself lifted, dragged back to shore. My board trailed behind, the ocean reclaiming the pieces of me it had stolen. On the sand, the world tilted. The sun was too bright, the sky too wide, and my chest heaved as I tried to stay conscious. Each breath felt like a battle, and with every battle I wondered if this was the last one I would win. The ambulance sirens wailed, distant but urgent. My mother's prayers echoed in my ears as paramedics worked furiously, their hands pressing, wrapping, fighting the tide of blood. I saw faces above me, fear, disbelief, pity. They said survival itself was a miracle. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking of miracles. I was thinking of the ocean, of waves I might never ride again, of dreams slipping away faster than my lifeblood. My body shook, not from the cold but from the weight of realization. Everything I loved could be gone in a single bite. And as the world faded to black, one question haunted me: was this the end of my story? Or just the beginning of a fight no one believed I could win? The ambulance roared down the road, sirens slicing through the morning air, but inside the vehicle time moved differently. Every second stretched, every heartbeat pounded like a drum, and I clung desperately to consciousness. The paramedic's voice was sharp but steady. Stay with us, Bethany. Stay awake. His hands pressed firmly against the tourniquet, blood soaking through layers of bandages. My vision blurred, the edges of the world darkening, but I focused on that voice, on the rhythm of words that tethered me to life. The salty taste of blood filled my mouth, the smell of antiseptic mixed with ocean salt. And I realized survival wasn't just a battle, it was a war I had only just entered. Every second became a countdown, and I didn't know if the clock was running out or giving me one last chance. When the ambulance doors burst open at the hospital, chaos swallowed me. Fluorescent lights seared my eyes as a flurry of doctors and nurses rushed to my side. Stretchers squealed against the floor, voices barked commands, pulse dropping. Prepare transfusion. Move, move. I felt cold metal against my skin, the sting of needles piercing veins, the weight of oxygen pressed against my face. My body was numb, yet every sensation screamed louder than the last. In the blur, I saw familiar faces, my parents, their expressions carved with fear and desperation. My mother's hands trembled as she gripped mine, whispering through tears, "God is with you, Bethany. Hold on. Please hold on." My father stood stiff by the wall, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the doctors as if sheer willpower could keep me alive. I realized then that survival wasn't just mine to fight for, it was theirs too, and the weight of their love held me between two worlds. The hours that followed were fragments stitched together by pain and prayer. Machines beeped around me, each sound a fragile reminder that I was still here. I drifted in and out, sometimes caught in dreams of endless waves, sometimes jolted awake by the sharp voices of nurses. Pressure dropping, more fluids now. I saw shadows cross my vision, flashes of surfboards, sunlight, salt spray, then darkness again. At one point, I thought I heard the ocean itself calling me, a low rumble beneath the chaos of the room. I wondered if it was real or if I was already slipping away. Then, cutting through everything, I heard my mother's voice again, steady and firm. "You are stronger than this. Don't let go." Her words became the rope I clung to, pulling me back from the edge. And yet, deep inside, a darker thought whispered, what if surviving meant never returning to the life I once knew? Eventually, the storm of hands and voices slowed. The doctors leaned back, exhaustion etched into their faces, and one of them finally said the word that let my parents breathe again: stable. Relief crashed over the room like a wave. But it wasn't pure relief. It was mixed with grief. My left arm was gone, bandaged tightly. The loss undeniable. My dream had always been tied to my body, to the balance and strength I carried on my board. Now part of me was missing, and I didn't know if the ocean would ever accept me back. Friends and neighbors came to visit over the next few days, their smiles forced, their eyes heavy with pity. Some said, "You're so brave," but I heard the unspoken words behind their voices. "It's over for you." Lying in that hospital bed, I stared at the ceiling, the beeping machines my only companions in the quiet hours of night. My body felt weak, but my mind was restless, caught between gratitude for life and despair for what I had lost. I replayed the attack again, and again the shadow rising. The bite, the blood end, each time I asked myself, why me? Was this the price of chasing dreams too big for an island? Was I meant to let go now, to accept a life without the ocean? Or was this scar not an ending, but a beginning I didn't yet understand? And as the night fell over the hospital, one truth became clear: I had survived the shark, but the real battle was only just beginning. The first days after the surgery were filled with quiet stares and careful words. People tiptoed around me as if I might shatter with a single touch. Doctors spoke softly, nurses moved with pity, and even my closest friends struggled to hide their fear. My body felt like a stranger's. The bandages where my arm used to be itched and burned, and every time I glanced down, reality struck me all over again. I was alive, yes, but pieces of me were missing. The girl who had belonged to the ocean was gone, or at least that's what everyone seemed to believe. It didn't take long before the whispers started, and each one carried the same cruel message. Her dream is over. Some visitors smiled at me, but their eyes betrayed them. Teachers brought cards from classmates, writing messages about bravery and strength, yet I could read between the lines. They were saying goodbye to the surfer I had been. Neighbors shook their heads when they thought I couldn't see, whispering about how I'd have to move on and find a new path. Even within my church, some well-meaning voices urged me to focus on other talents, to accept that surfing belonged to the past. Their pity weighed heavier than the pain of the wound itself. For the first time, I realized that the world had already buried the surfer I still believed was alive inside me. The media didn't help. Reporters descended on the island, cameras flashing, microphones crowding around me. They wanted the story of the girl who lost her arm to a shark. They didn't care about who I was beyond the tragedy. Headlines screamed about survival, but beneath the praise lay a quiet assumption. I was a symbol now, not a competitor. They called me brave, inspiring, even miraculous. But no one called me an athlete anymore. It was as if the bite had erased my victories, my hours of training, my identity in the water. They wanted to define me by my wound, not my will. And each time I read those stories, a question gnawed at me: was I the only one who still believed in my return? At home, my parents tried to protect me from the noise, but I could see the worry in their faces. My father sat in silence more often, his hands folded, eyes clouded with thought. My mother prayed louder, longer, as if she could drown out the doubt that filled the air. Friends visited less frequently, their conversations awkward, their laughter brittle. Even Alana, who had been there that morning in the water, sometimes struggled to meet my eyes. It wasn't that they didn't love me, they just didn't know how to believe for me. The silence between us hurt more than their words ever could. I began to wonder if the ocean itself had abandoned me, if the waves would reject me now that I was broken. But late at night, when the house grew still and only the wind rattled the palms outside, I lay awake and felt the pull of the sea. Memories of rides carved into my heart returned. The spray on my face, the roar under my board, the feeling of becoming one with something vast and untamed. That wasn't gone. The shark had taken my arm, but it hadn't taken the fire in my chest. Yet holding on to that truth felt like gripping a rope slipping through my fingers. I was fighting not just against pain, but against the weight of a world that had already decided my fate. And in that quiet war between what they said and what I knew, I made a decision. The world might have given up on me, but I would not give up on myself. The first time I stood near the shoreline after the attack, the ocean looked different. It was the same stretch of blue I had grown up loving, but now it carried a shadow. The rhythm of waves that once called me felt heavier, as if the sea itself was daring me to step back inside. My body was still frail, my balance uncertain, and every movement reminded me of what I had lost. People assumed I would never return. Some even said it outright. "It's too dangerous, Bethany. You should be grateful you survived. Don't push your luck." Their words stung, not because they doubted me, but because part of me feared they might be right. But standing on that sand, I realized fear wasn't my enemy, the silence of giving up was. The first paddle back into the water was clumsy. My board felt heavier, the ocean stronger, and with only one arm, every stroke demanded twice the effort. Muscles burned, my chest heaved, and I could feel eyes watching from the shore. Some whispered encouragement, others pity. My father waded out with me, steadying the board, his voice calm but firm. "You've always belonged here, Bethany. Take it one wave at a time." I nodded, gripping the board tightly, trying to ignore the ache of imbalance. Every splash of water against my face reminded me of that morning, the flash of teeth, the blur of blood. My heart raced, but I pressed forward. Every drop of salt water carried a question. Was I still the surfer I once believed I was? Days turned into weeks, and each session in the water became a battlefield. I experimented with techniques, learning to paddle with one arm, shifting my weight differently, adapting every move. It was exhausting, humiliating at times. I wiped out more than I had in years, thrown against waves I used to dominate with ease. Friends surfed beside me, pretending not to notice my struggles, but I could see the worry in their eyes. They wondered if I was torturing myself, chasing something already gone. But each wipeout taught me more than victory ever had. Patience, creativity, resilience. I began to sense that the ocean didn't care about my missing arm. It cared only about my will to rise. And slowly, ride by ride, I felt the tide shifting the ocean, testing me, but also accepting me again. My first real breakthrough came on a quiet morning. The beach was nearly empty, the horizon painted gold by the rising sun. I paddled out, every stroke heavy but determined, and waited for the swell. When it came, I turned, pushed, and for the first time since the attack, I caught a clean wave. The board lifted beneath me, my body steadied, and I rose. The wind whipped across my face, spray kissed my skin, and for those few seconds, it was as if nothing had changed. I wasn't a survivor, or a victim, or a story for reporters. I was a surfer, pure, free, alive. When I reached the shore, tears blurred my vision, and even my father's steady composure cracked as he clapped, pride spilling from his eyes. But even in that triumph, a truth echoed inside me: the hardest waves weren't in the ocean. They were in the minds of those who still doubted me. Word spread quickly. People talked about the girl who had returned to the water. Some called me brave, others reckless. The media resurfaced, spinning the narrative of the one-armed surfer. But behind the headlines, doubt lingered. Could I ever compete again? Could I stand shoulder to shoulder with the best? Or was this just a symbolic gesture, a story for sympathy? Those questions burned in me like fire. I didn't return to surfing for pity. I returned because the ocean was my truth, my calling. And no scar, no headline, no whisper would take that away. The world still said it was impossible. But I was preparing to prove them all wrong, wave after wave, until there was no doubt left. The ocean had welcomed me back, but it didn't make the journey easy. Each day I pushed myself harder, and each day my body reminded me of what had been taken. Paddling with one arm was a war against fatigue. My shoulders ached, my lungs burned, and sometimes my board slipped away from under me as if mocking my imbalance. On the surface, people clapped when they saw me ride even the smallest wave, but what they didn't see were the hours of failure behind those fleeting victories. The beach was filled with smiles, yet the whispers followed me everywhere. She never compete again. It's impossible. The cheers felt hollow when paired with the doubts, and I wondered if my fight was destined to end before it truly began. At night, the pain deepened. My body stiffened from exertion, the wound ached beneath the bandages, and sleep rarely came. I replayed every wipeout, every stumble, every reminder that I was no longer the same. Sometimes I cried quietly, pressing my face into the pillow so my family wouldn't hear. I hated the pity more than the pain. I didn't want them to see me as fragile. But alone in the dark, I faced the truth. This comeback was tearing me apart, physically and emotionally. Faith gave me strength. But faith didn't erase the ache in my muscles or the doubts that stalked me like shadows. And in those long nights, a dangerous thought whispered, what if they were right? What if I was chasing a ghost that no longer existed? The ocean, once my sanctuary, now felt like both friend and enemy. Every wave was a lesson, but also a test that left me bruised and drained. My coaches encouraged me, but their eyes carried hesitation. They knew how unforgiving competitions could be. Other surfers gave polite smiles, yet some didn't hide their skepticism. "It's inspiring, she's trying," one said, "but she never lasts against the pros." Their words burned into me more than the salt in my cuts. I learned to stay quiet, to let my silence carry the weight of my defiance. Yet even silence wasn't enough to silence the doubts inside me. Every time I paddled out, it felt like I wasn't just fighting the ocean, I was fighting the entire world's expectation of my failure. One afternoon, during a practice session, I faced a wipeout that nearly broke me. A large set rolled in, and I misjudged my balance. The board flipped, the wave crushed me, and the ocean dragged me under with merciless force. With only one arm to push against the surge, panic surged through me. My chest screamed for air, salt burned my throat, and for a terrifying moment, I thought this was how my story would end, not with a shark's bite, but with the weight of the sea. When I finally broke the surface, gasping and shaking, I saw the fear on my father's face as he rushed into the water. "Maybe we should stop," he said, his voice trembling. But I shook my head, coughing, refusing to let the ocean claim me again. That day taught me a brutal truth. My comeback wouldn't just demand strength, it would demand everything I had left to give. The weeks that followed were relentless. My arm wasn't growing back, my body wasn't magically adapting overnight. Progress came in inches, not miles, and each inch felt paid for in blood and exhaustion. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to find a rhythm. My balance adjusted, my paddling grew steadier, and the wipeouts became less frequent. Still, the pain never disappeared. Each victory came wrapped in suffering. And I realized that this was the true price of chasing dreams: sacrifice, heartbreak, and the willingness to endure pain most people would run from. And as the sun set on another grueling day, I asked myself the same question I knew the world was asking too: was all this pain worth it? Or would it break me before I proved them wrong? Returning to the ocean was one kind of battle, but facing people was another. In the water, the waves tested my body. On land, the world tested my spirit. At first, people smiled when they saw me walking down the street. They called me brave, inspiring, strong, but behind those words, I caught the hesitation, the tilt of the head, the forced smile, the whispers that slipped out when they thought I couldn't hear. To them, I was a story, not a surfer anymore. I was a girl who had survived a shark attack, not a competitor with dreams still burning. And it didn't take long for admiration to twist into something sharper: mockery disguised as truth. Some kids at school tried to joke about it. They mimicked paddling with one arm, laughed about sharks waiting for round two, or whispered that I was only chasing attention. Now, I kept my head down, but their words cut deeper than the scar on my shoulder. Teachers tried to silence the laughter, but even they carried doubt in their eyes. When competitions were mentioned, their voices grew careful. "Maybe you should focus on your studies now. Surfing might not be realistic anymore." Each time they said it, I clenched my fists beneath the desk, swallowing the anger rising in my chest. Because no matter how quiet the room became, I could always hear the unspoken message: "You don't belong here anymore." It wasn't just classmates. Strangers, too, felt entitled to decide my limits. At the grocery store, someone told my mom, "At least she's alive. She should be grateful." At church, an older woman touched my arm gently and said, "Maybe God saved you for a different path, something safer." Everyone thought they were being kind, but their words felt like walls closing in. Gratitude wasn't the problem. I was grateful every day to still breathe, to still stand. But gratitude didn't mean giving up the ocean. I wanted both to live and to chase the waves. Why did everyone else think those things had to be separate? And in their voices, I began to hear not just doubt, but the echo of fear that they were right and I was wrong. The silence became its own prison. Friends who used to surf with me called less often. Some said they were busy, others avoided me completely. I couldn't blame them. They didn't know what to say anymore. My laughter was replaced with long stretches of quiet, sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon, wondering if the ocean was still waiting for me, or if it had already moved on. Loneliness crept in like a tide, slow and relentless. I missed the easy camaraderie, the shouts of encouragement in the lineup, the joy of belonging. Now, I belonged nowhere. One night, after a long day of training that ended in yet another wipeout, I overheard two surfers talking on the beach. They didn't see me in the shadows. "It's sad," one said. "She'd never really come back. She should just quit before she embarrasses herself." Their words hit like another wave, knocking the breath from my chest. Embarrassment, that's what they expected of me. They weren't afraid of me failing. They were waiting for it. And that's when I understood the cruel truth. Some people weren't doubting me because they cared, they were doubting me because my fight made them uncomfortable. I walked home that night in silence, sand sticking to my feet, tears hidden by the dark. I thought of quitting, of letting their words settle over me like chains. But then I remembered the first wave I ever rode, the sound of my father cheering, the way the ocean had lifted me higher than my fears. That memory burned brighter than their mockery. I realized then that silence could be twisted into power. I didn't need to fight their words with words of my own. My answer would come in the water, where the only judge that mattered was the sea itself. And as I lay down that night, staring at the ceiling, I whispered a promise to myself. The next time they doubted me, I would not answer with excuses. I would answer with waves. The ocean had tested me with pain, with wipeouts, with doubt, but nothing compared to the challenge of stepping back into competition. Training sessions were one thing, facing a panel of judges, a lineup of seasoned surfers, and a crowd waiting to see if the girl with one arm would fail, that was another. My stomach churned as I waxed my board that morning, hands trembling slightly, the weight of expectation pressing down. My parents stood nearby, my mother whispering prayers, my father silent but firm. Alana squeezed my shoulder, her eyes saying what words couldn't. You can do this. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a heat, it was a verdict the world had been waiting for. As I paddled out, the water felt colder, heavier. Every eye on the beach followed me, and I could almost hear the whispers riding the wind. Some came to cheer me on. Others came to watch me fall. My first strokes were clumsy, the imbalance of one arm more obvious than ever under the pressure. The other surfers looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and pity, their faces calm, their bodies steady. They were waiting for me to crack. I bit my lip, focused on the horizon, and prayed for strength. Every second in that lineup felt like the ocean was asking me the same question everyone else was asking: are you truly ready? The set rolled in, waves rising like glassy giants under the sun. My heart pounded as one approached, perfect, steep, and demanding. This was it. I turned, dug my arm into the water with all the force I had, and felt the board catch. The drop was sudden, the rush immediate. Spray stung my face, the wind whipped my hair, and instinct took over. I carved down the face, shifting weight, adjusting balance, every move precise and deliberate. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about my missing arm. I wasn't thinking about pity, or headlines, or doubt. I was thinking about the wave, the rhythm, the dance that had always been mine. And as I reached the bottom turn and powered back up the face, I realized the truth: the ocean still recognized me as one of its own. The crowd erupted as I rode it all the way in. My chest heaved, my body burned, but inside I felt something I hadn't in so long: freedom. Judges scribbled notes, surfers exchanged glances, and I could see the shift happening, subtle but undeniable. The whispers of pity were quieter now, drowned out by gasps of disbelief. Still, I knew one ride wasn't enough. Doubt doesn't disappear with a single wave. I paddled back out, hungry, ready for more. The next set came, and again I launched forward, steadier this time, faster, sharper. Turn after turn, I answered the questions that had haunted me since the attack. Could I compete? Could I still belong here? Yes, but as the heat went on, I knew one thing was still missing. I hadn't yet proven to myself that this wasn't just luck, but destiny reclaiming its place. By the time the horn blew, I was exhausted but exhilarated. I dragged myself onto the sand, dripping, shaking, but standing tall. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing, microphones thrust at me. I ignored them, my eyes searching instead for the faces that mattered. My father's proud smile, my mother's tearful eyes, Alana's triumphant cheer. In that moment, I knew the tide had turned. The girl the world had written off was not gone. She was right here, salt on her skin, fire in her heart. Proving wave after wave that scars don't define strength, they reveal it. And as I stood on that beach, the cheers of strangers ringing in my ears, I knew this was only the beginning. The real storm was still to come. After that first competition back, I thought the hardest part was behind me, but I quickly realized the real battle wasn't just proving I could surf again, it was learning to carry the weight of what had happened without letting it crush me. The spotlight followed me everywhere now. Reporters wanted interviews. Magazines wanted photo shoots. Strangers stopped me in the street to tell me how inspiring I was. And while their words seemed kind, they often left me hollow. I didn't want to be a headline. I didn't want to be the girl with one arm. I wanted to be Bethany, the surfer, the competitor, the dreamer. Yet no matter where I turned, the shadow of the attack hung over me like a storm cloud. And slowly, I began to realize that my greatest obstacle wasn't the shark, or the ocean, or even my missing arm. It was the weight of expectations pressing in from every side. There were days I felt crushed beneath it. When I paddled out, people didn't just see me as another athlete, they saw me as a spectacle. If I wiped out, whispers spread that maybe it was too much. If I won a heat, they called it incredible, but with the undertone of surprise, as if they'd never expected me to succeed. I was never just judged for my surfing anymore. I was judged against the ghost of who I used to be. The pressure to carry not only my dream, but the dreams of everyone who saw themselves in me, was suffocating. And in quiet moments, when the cameras were gone and the beach was empty, I asked myself a question I was almost afraid to answer: who am I without the ocean's approval? One evening, I sat on the porch with my father, watching the waves crash under the fading light. I confessed the weight pressing on me. Everyone wants me to be strong all the time, I said, voice cracking. What if I can't? He was silent for a long moment, then finally said, Bethany, strength isn't about never falling. It's about standing again after you fall. You don't have to carry the world. Just carry yourself. His words settled into me like the tide settling over the reef. For the first time, I understood I didn't have to be a symbol for everyone else. I just had to be true to myself. And once that truth took root, the burden that once felt like chains began to feel like wings. The next morning, I paddled out alone. The horizon stretched endless and quiet. No judges, no reporters, no crowds. Just me and the sea. For the first time since the attack, I didn't think about how the world saw me. I didn't think about pity or doubt. I thought only about the rhythm of my strokes, the rise and fall of the swell, the peace of belonging to something bigger than myself. When the wave came, I rode it not to prove anything, but because I loved it. And in that ride, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: freedom. The ocean had taken so much from me, but it also gave me back the part of myself I thought I'd lost. And in that moment of pure silence and speed, I realized the weight wasn't mine to fear, it was mine to transform. From then on, I carried my story differently. Not as a burden, but as a gift. I began to see the people who stopped me on the street in a new way, not as interruptions, but as souls searching for hope. If my scar could show them that broken things could still be beautiful, then maybe the weight wasn't so heavy after all. Competing still mattered, winning still burned in me, but I no longer measured my worth by trophies or headlines. I measured it by the courage to paddle out again, day after day, no matter what the world expected. And with that shift, I discovered the truth I'd been chasing all along: the weight that once surfing gave me my voice back. But what I didn't expect was how far that voice would travel. At first, the attention overwhelmed me. Cameras followed me, reporters filled notebooks with every detail of my life, and publishers reached out with contracts I never thought I'd see. They all wanted the story. The girl who lost her arm to a shark and returned to the waves. But what I discovered was that my story didn't belong just to me anymore. People from around the world wrote letters, emails, messages. They told me how my fight gave them strength to face cancer, bullying, loss, depression. My scar had become a mirror where others saw their own struggles reflected. And in that realization, I understood something powerful. The ocean had given me a gift far greater than trophies. A story that carried hope beyond the shoreline. It began with speaking engagements. At first, I was terrified. Standing in front of a crowd was scarier than facing any wave. My heart raced, palms sweating, the words catching in my throat. But when I spoke about fear, about doubt, about pain, the silence in the room wasn't judgment, it was connection. I saw tears in the eyes of strangers, nods of understanding, the kind of recognition that comes when you realize you're not alone. That's when I learned that surfing was only part of my calling. The other part was telling the truth about resilience. But even as my voice grew louder on stage, I still felt the pull of the ocean, asking, will you keep chasing waves, or will you let the world redefine you again? I refused to choose. I kept training, kept competing, while also writing my story. My book, Soul Surfer, became more than pages, it became a lifeline. Parents read it to their children, coaches used it in locker rooms, and people who had never touched a surfboard told me it helped them face their own storms. When Hollywood came knocking to make it into a film, I hesitated. I worried they'd turn it into a spectacle, stripping away the truth. But as production unfolded, I saw something else. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was a reminder to the world that scars don't end lives. they shaped them. And yet, with every new layer of fame, I had to ask myself, by living for their applause, or for the passion that started it all? Traveling the world opened my eyes in ways the island never could. I met children missing limbs who ran to me with smiles, parents who thanked me for showing their kids that nothing was impossible, soldiers who told me my fight helped them push through their own recovery. Each encounter left me humbled. Each handshake reminded me that resilience isn't rare, it's hidden in everyone, waiting to be awakened. But the more people I met, the more I realized something else. Inspiration alone isn't enough. You can inspire someone for a moment, but to truly change lives, you have to show them how to keep standing when the world knocks them down again and again. And so, my mission grew beyond waves and words. It became about living every day as proof that brokenness can still be beautiful, powerful, unstoppable. Through all the speeches, the interviews, the travel, the ocean remained my anchor. It reminded me of where I came from, of the days when no one believed I'd return, of the silence that nearly crushed me every time I paddled out. I remembered that resilience isn't built in front of cameras, it's built in the quiet, in the hours no one sees, in the falls that happen before the victories. That truth grounded me, kept me from losing myself in the storm of fame. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't a headline, or a movie character, or even just a survivor. I was still a surfer, chasing waves, because the sea was where I felt most alive. And as I looked toward the horizon, I realized that my story didn't end at survival, it began there, stretching farther than I had ever dreamed. Eaten to crush me had become the very thing that set me free. When I look back now, the ocean feels like more than water, and waves, it feels like a mirror of life itself. It has risen against me with teeth and fury, but it has also carried me to heights I never imagined. What once tried to take everything from me gave me the foundation for a story that continues to ripple far beyond the shore. Today, when I step onto the sand, I no longer see only the surfer chasing competitions. I see a woman, a mother, a mentor, someone whose scars have become symbols not of loss, but of resilience. And as much as I've learned to ride waves, I've also learned that life's greatest legacy isn't found in victory, it's found in what we pass on to others. Motherhood reshaped me in ways even the shark could not. Holding my children for the first time, I realized my fight had never been only for me. Every sleepless night, every wave conquered, every scar embraced, it all became a story I could tell them about what it means to stand when the world knocks you down. When I watch them splash in the shallows, laughing without fear, I remember the little girl I once was, chasing waves without hesitation, and I pray that my life shows them that courage doesn't mean the absence of fear, it means facing it anyway. But even as joy filled my home, a quiet question lingered: would my children grow up knowing me as a mother, or as a fighter who never stopped chasing the sea? Balancing the two hasn't been easy. There are days when the waves call louder than anything else, and I ache to chase them. And there are days when the weight of family feels heavier than any swell, but I've come to realize that my legacy isn't about choosing one or the other, it's about showing that love can be lived in both. Competing, writing, speaking, mothering, all of it flows together like currents in the same ocean. Each part fuels the other. Each part makes me whole. And in that balance, I discovered something I had never seen before. The shark did not steal my future, it redirected it. The world still sees me as a soul surfer, and I carry that name with pride, not because of fame or recognition, but because it speaks to something deeper. To surf with your soul means to ride waves, not for glory, but for connection to creation, to God, to yourself, to others. It means that even when the water drags you under, you rise again with more gratitude than fear. It means understanding that scars are not endings, but beginnings. I've met thousands who have told me their own stories of survival accidents, illnesses, losses that almost broke them. And each time, I remind them, we are not defined by what we lose, but by what we do with what remains. My missing arm isn't a weakness. It's a reminder that strength comes in unexpected forms. And if my journey teaches anything, it's that no one should be underestimated, not the quiet ones, not the broken ones, not the ones the world has already written off. Because sometimes, the very thing that looks like the end is only the horizon of something greater waiting to be discovered. When I paddle out today, the ocean greets me with the same roar it always has. But I ride differently now. Not just to prove myself, not just to win heats, but to savor the gift of still being here, of still feeling the rush of water beneath me. I carry with me the voices of those who said I couldn't, the faces of those who doubted, the weight of those who pitied, but I also carry the cheers of those who believed, the prayers of my family, the quiet strength of every soul who ever fought their way back from the brink. My story will outlive me. It will echo in my children, in the people who read my books, in the audiences who hear my words, in the surfers who chase waves with scars of their own, and maybe, just maybe, it will remind someone standing on the edge of surrender that they are stronger than they know. And as I watch the sun dip below the horizon, waves turning gold beneath its glow, I understand my legacy clearly. The ocean may have taken my arm, but it gave me back something greater, a life lived not in fear, but in faith, resilience, and endless hope. Bethany's story isn't just about surfing, it's about proving that the world is wrong when it tells you to quit. It's about facing loss, carrying scars, and still daring to chase the horizon. She didn't win by avoiding fear. She won by paddling straight into it. And in doing so, she showed us all that resilience is the greatest wave we will ever ride. Her journey reminds us that strength isn't about what you hold in your hands, but about what you refuse to let go of in your heart. The ocean took her arm, but it gave her back a legacy, one that continues to inspire millions across the globe. So now I want to ask you, where are you watching this story from? Which country, which city, which wave of your own are you trying to conquer? Drop it in the comments side. Love to know how far this story travels. If Bethany's story touched you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel Beyond the Game, and turn on the notification bell, because here we share more powerful journeys of resilience, sports, and karma that will leave you inspired. The waves of life will always rise. The question is, will you rise with them?